Hello everyone, so the group stage for TI6 just concluded today, and I've been meaning to make the recap videos during the group stage. However, there was just way too many games and way too many highlights I had to upload during the last 3 days. So I figured I might as well just do these recap videos when I have more time. I mean, it's better late than never, I suppose. So this video will cover the first day, and I'll have 2 more videos coming up shortly to cover the other 2 days. So how the group stage works is from the 16 teams, they're split into 2 groups of 8, and they play each other once in a 2-game series. And each win awards the winner 1 point, and the 4 teams with the highest points will go to the winner bracket at the main event, and the bottom 4 teams will be in the loser bracket. So I feel like it's appropriate to do these recaps differently than my normal ones, just because there are so many games and it'll be impossible for me to talk about all of them. Instead, I'll just go over each team and talk about how they did and my impression of their performance every day. And as you can see here, this is how Group A looked after day 1. And just to explain the numbers a little bit, the third column is their win, draw, and loss ratio for their series. The fourth column is their win-loss ratio for their games, and the last column is the total amount of points they have. So for example, EG, OG, and LGD are tied for first place, as all of them have won 1 series, drew 1 series, and lost 0 series. And their overall win ratio is 4 wins and 2 losses, and they all have 4 points after the first day. And now I'll just go down the list and start with EG. So coming into the tournament, I don't think many people had that high of hopes for EG since they did pretty poorly at Starladder, which is the only tournament they played in after they qualified for TI. And traditionally, EG has always been a team that starts off very slow in the tournament, where they would drop to the lower bracket and fight their way back. However, on the first day of group stage, they actually performed very well. They 2-0 Navi, which is a team they lost to at Starladder, and they went 1-1 with 2 of the tournament favorites, OG and Wings. So they arguably had the hardest matchup on the first day, yet they did very well in all 3 series. And tied with EG for first place is OG, one of the 4 favorites for this tournament. They didn't have a very great start to the day, where they lost an epic 51-minute game with LGD. OG was up 15k gold, however their Care Legion strat didn't pan out very well. And a few pick-off late game allowed LGD to make an amazing comeback to a game where most people thought was over at 30 minutes. But the loss didn't seem to affect OG that much. They won game 2 convincingly, despite LGD playing out their mind just like they did in the first game. And then OG went on into Alliance, and even though they had some issues with EG, they still did respectfully well and got a tie in that series. And the third team who also got 4 points on the first day, surprising many people, is LGD. And in case you didn't know, LGD are playing with a standing since September. Their support player could not secure a visa, so they had to play with their coach Banana as a stand-in. And even though Banana is by no means a bad player, I mean the dude has won a TI before, but it's still a pretty big blow to the team since they lost a player they've been practicing and playing with for the last few months. And many people pretty much counted out LGD out of the tournament because of that. But after an amazing first series against OG, it felt like LGD was on fire, and they went on and beat Escape 2-0 and tied with Alliance 1-1. And we have another 3 team tied at 4th place. So the first team that finished 4th was TNC, Philippines' only hope in this tournament after Execution lost in the wildcard. And they had a rough start on day 1 as they dropped both games against Alliance. However, they did not tilt. Instead, they did the opposite of tilting, whatever that is. They upset the Wings by taking them down 2-0, and they finished the day by going 1-1 against Navi. It was hard to expect how they would perform since they haven't played much games at international lands, and many people consider them the weakest team of the group, especially after getting 2-0 by Alliance. However, I think they proved everyone wrong with their following performances. And the second team tied at 4th place with 3 points is Wings, who are considered one of the stronger teams in the group next to OG. And they had a really good start today by taking the first game against EG, and it looked like they were about to 2-0 EG. And they even had one of their conventional, non-conventional draft with punch support and stuff. But their draft eventually allowed EG to snowball with a Huskar, and they ended up having to tie the series 1-1. And the second series against TNC surprised many people as they got outplayed heavily by TNC in both games and lost the series 0-2. I think this once again shows their instability as many people have feared. I mean, they can beat the best team in the world on any given day, but also they seem to be able to lose to any team in the world as well. And even though they did 2-0 escape in their last series, their results from day 1 is far from satisfactory. And the third team that tied at 4th is Alliance, who had an okay showing on the first day, I would say. I mean, they looked very good in their first series against TNC as they 2-0'd them very convincingly. They did drop 0-2 to OG, but that's kind of the expected result. And they tied their last series against LGD, which is respectable considering LGD looked extremely good on the first day. At 7th place in Group A is Navi, and their performance on the first day was very poor. considering I think many people had high hopes for them in this tournament. I mean, they were by no means the favorite, but many people probably had hopes that they would at least place top 4 in the group. And their schedule on the first day was arguably the easiest schedule they could have gotten as well. So I think it was fair to expect them to win majority of the games, especially considering they won the last LAN coming into TI. However, they lost 0-2 to EG, they tied a series against Escape, who is the worst in the group, and they also tied against TNC, who were also considered one of the weaker teams before the group stage started. And at last place, we have the wildcard team, Escape, winning only one game on the first day. They didn't look very good at all. I mean, it looks like Syndra's TI's curse will continue to live on, as his team always somehow makes it into TI, but they always seem to exit very early on. And this is group A's result from day 1, and I think it was good that there weren't any undefeated team after first day. There were actually quite a few upsets, and most of the team actually looked very close in terms of plays on the first day. So group A will seem to be very heavily contested, as opposed to Wings and OG dominating like many people thought it was going to be. Now we move on to Group B, and as for Group B, only 2 sets of series were played on the first day, so it was harder to differentiate between the standings, especially at the top. However, I think it was very clear who the bottom of the group is, as 2 teams were not able to win any games on the first day at all. But first, let's start with the top of the group. We have a 4-way tie for first, and the first team we'll be talking about is Digital Chaos. Although there weren't that many games played, but you could tell how badly they wanted to win. There was a very epic game against MVP where they had no business winning that game at all after the early game. However, they played very patiently, and by slow pushing and finding openings, they were able to backdoor MVP's barracks and slowly turn the game into their favor. And that game honestly just set a tone for this team, who most people did not have any high expectation for, especially after their 3 straight poor tournament finishes right before TI. And the second team tied for first place was Team Secret. It's hard to say much about their performance since they abused Huskar to all 3 of their wins on the first day. But nonetheless, whatever works, man. I mean, winning is probably by far the most important thing at TI. Who cares that it doesn't look pretty? The third team tied for first was Newbie, who is also considered one of the big 4 coming to the tournament. However, their showing on the first day was actually not that convincing. It was by no means bad. I mean, they tied a series against the other tournament favorite, Team Liquid, and they beat VGR 2-0. So both are very reasonable results. However, if you look at the game, especially the first game versus VGR, it was honestly too close for comfort. But nonetheless, in the end, they still got the job done, and I guess that's what matters. The final team tied for first was the wildcard team eHome. Even though they're a wildcard team, I don't feel like anyone look at them that way, since all their players on the roster are very good players that performed well at previous TIs. And the results from day 1 is respectable, as they 2-0'd one of the weaker team in the group, Fnatic, and tied with Liquid. And I think Ice is finally fitting into his carry role, which is very good for eHome, since I remember they constantly change their position around just to find the best playstyle for them. And it seems like they're finally gelling well together as a team. At 5th place, we have another tie, so the first team at 5th place is MVP Phoenix. And honestly, some of the games today was so close that it really could went either way, and it would honestly change the placing entirely. So even though they only got 2 draws and are in 5th place on the first day, their performance wasn't that bad. And what's important is that they stuck to their playstyle, which resulted in some very entertaining games, and they just need to make a few minor adjustments to win games that they really should have won. And similar things could be said for Team Liquid. However, as one of the tournament favorite, I feel like they just weren't dominant enough on the first day. So similar evaluation as Newbie, I guess. Newbie and TL did tie their series, but Newbie did have an arguably easier second set matchup. So honestly, we can't wait the first day result that heavily yet. At the bottom of Group B, we have 2 teams that failed to win any games on the first day, and one of them is Vici Gaming Reborn. They, just like LGD, suffer from a visa issue, where Yang, the offlaner, could not come to TI, therefore their coach Mikasa has to play the offlane role, even though he's predominantly a mid lane player, which honestly explains why they're doing so poorly. Compared to LGD, who did very well on the first day, LGD had a really good replacement, since Banana was a support player, and replacing another support player can work. However, for VGR, they had no suitable offlaner replacement. And on top of that, coming to TI, I felt like Yang was arguably VGR's best player, and he would often make enough space early on for the team, allowing ZYF to get enough farm to carry the game. However, without Yang, VGR is just not the same, and their result on the first day really showed, as they went 0-4. The other team that also finished without the win was Fnatic, who honestly doesn't have much of an excuse. other than just getting outplayed in all 4 of the games against eHome and Digital Chaos. They definitely need to have a stronger showing if they want to make it into the winner bracket. And this is the result from Group B on the first day. It's hard to compare between teams with so few games played, but I think everyone had a reasonably good showing on the first day from this group, with the exception being VGR and Fnatic. And with that, this concludes my Day 2 recap, aka Day 1 group stage for TI6. There were actually so many amazing games and awesome moments from Day 1, so please go check them out as I will post the links below. And as usual, please consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter if you like my content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.